Here we go.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about this topic, researching the market, which is pretty close to my heart. Let me just get started by talking a little bit about me. So my background has been in product management for the last 16 years. I've worked in a variety of Silicon Valley companies, both consumer-facing and enterprise-facing companies, but always in the realm of product management, which is the job of understanding the market, understanding customer needs, and designing products, and working with engineers to build these products that satisfy the customer need, make them happy, ultimately make revenue for the company. So my background is really largely part of online advertising. I spent a number of years working on online advertising companies, and just recently I started my own company, which is called Wild Needle, and took a complete divergence, went into a complete new area making mobile games. So new area for me, but my whole background has really been in technology companies. And in all of these, I was almost always one of the first 10 employees of the company, except for PayPal. But even at PayPal, I was one of the first employees helping the company localize into Germany, which was their first non-English product. So I was thinking about the topic of researching the market and wondering, where do I start researching the market? There's so much to talk about, and to compress it into 15 minutes is a bit of a challenge, so I'll do my best. The first thought that came to me is to consider why expanding. Why do you need to expand into global markets, or why do you need to expand into new markets at all? One of the first thoughts that came to me was whether your home market is already saturated. Let's say you're already a little startup company, or maybe you've gotten some traction in your home market, and your home market is saturated. You really have no prospects for growth in that country or in that particular market that you're going after. So a company that I know in this area is one right down the street from where I live, which is Facebook. In the US, Facebook has really achieved a pretty saturated level, and they've published numbers showing that they're actually not seeing too much more growth in countries like the UK and the US. So looking for expansion in countries like India, China, if possible, Brazil, new markets that offer a new opportunity for companies like that. Or maybe your home market isn't saturated yet, but you feel like because of your investors or because of your board, you really want to go big. You want to go outside your home market. You really have a larger opportunity for growth outside your home market. So a company I worked at, which was called Seven, was in this space. We delivered services to mobile operators, and there are only 4 or 5 really big mobile operators in the US. We knew that even if we serviced them all, we still wanted a bigger business. So right from day one, even though that company was very small when I joined, 20 people I think, we already were targeting countries outside the US, UK, Singapore, things like that, so that we could expand our market internationally. Sometimes, if you're lucky, your customers may even demand a local presence. So, for example, when I was at Adify, my last company, we had people calling us up as soon as we launched the company. As soon as we got some press, we had people calling us up saying, can I get your product translated into German? Can I get your product localized for Australian dollars? And we were not really strategically thinking about those markets, but we had people practically begging us to bring our product to their market. So that was another motivator for that company in particular, was that as a technology company, people find out about your product even if you aren't really strategically going after that market, and they may ask you to bring that product to the market for them. And finally, competitive pressure can be a really important driver for growth into new markets. I was at a company called Flycast back in the beginning days of my career, which was in the online advertising space. And we were copying or following another company that had achieved some traction in that space called DoubleClick, which was recently acquired by Google. And with DoubleClick, anytime DoubleClick put out a new feature, we kind of wanted to put out a new feature too. And so they were educating the market for us, which was great. But as they expanded overseas, so did we. We felt like there was this need to kind of keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. And so we felt a need to expand as well. So this is just some of the factors that may inspire you to expand globally. But it's a challenging process, and I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later, and I'm sure you're going to hear about that through the rest of this presentation, about just exactly how much work it is. So once you've decided, yes, we are going to expand, we have really good opportunities in a new country, we're feeling the competitive pressure to expand into new markets, Some of the things that you're going to want to consider before you really get into that market is all of these things here. So for example, the size and the growth of the target market. It's really important to try to get your hands on as much research as you can. And for a small startup company, you probably don't have a huge research budget, so try to get as much information as you can from the local market, from scouring the internet. Two sources that I really like, one is called slideshare.net, where SlideShare shows presentations kind of like this one that people are making all around the world, and so it's a really great way to get a lot of competitive research. Another good source of information I find is Quora online. You can find a lot of really good insightful data that you just really can't find anywhere else. So try as much as possible as a small startup company to get as much information as you can, even through kind of these scrappy, resourcely means. So that's one thing that you're going to want to do, is to research the market through just as getting as much data as you can. And also considering the market, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you want to be able to consider, are there competitors in this market already? How much does this market know about your product? How much have they been educated? So a company like Groupon, which was, I think, the fastest growing company in the world for a while, or probably still is, Groupon pioneered this concept of the daily local deal, and they saw a lot of competitors spring up quickly all around the world. So I just read recently, I think they had 20 competitors in China alone within the first few months of them becoming an international company. So looking at China, they're wondering, should we now come in as the American company, the pioneer of this particular type of deal? Or should we partner with one of these local companies, or should we acquire one of these local companies? But having a presence in the local market, competitors can sort of pave the way for you a little bit, or potentially be an acquisition opportunity for you. And then existing customers in the market. So as I mentioned with Adify, there were people in the market already who were calling us up and asking us to prepare our product and prepare a service for them. So if you already have customers asking you to bring your product, that's a great thing. And one thing I can't stress enough is having the right local connections. So not just somebody who, for example, lived in that country or tells you that they understand that market, but truly somebody who lives and breathes and knows that industry really well. It's really important for making sure that the product is as tailored as possible to the local market. So building up those partnerships and building up a set of people who can represent you in the market, whether those are your employees or your partners. So once you decide that you're ready to dive into a local market, this is really where the work begins, and the devil is always in the details, I say. It's really all about the execution. So coming from a product mentality, one of my jobs was really to help companies that I worked for really embrace the local market opportunity, and it really affects everybody in the company. It's not just the biz dev team or the sales team. It's something that transforms your whole company. So as a product person, I spent a lot of time transforming our products into the local market. So not just translating the product, but really localizing it, thinking about date and currency formatting conventions, trying to make the product feel as natural and as local as possible. And it comes down to finance as well. Do you have the banking relationships set up to be able to accept currency, local currency, and pay out your customers in those, or pay out your partners in those currencies? On the way over here on the plane, it was interesting. I watched an ad for HSBC Bank, and the ad was a little girl who was trying to set up a lemonade stand. And so she had her dad in the kitchen making the lemonade, and she was out front putting up the sign. And what you see when she put up the sign was that she had listed out all the prices in all the major world currencies. So she had 50 US cents and euros and Hong Kong dollars, et cetera. And the point of the ad was, a tour bus showed up and 40 people walk out and they're all carrying money in all different currencies. And here, even just this little girl with the lemonade stand was able to accept all those currencies and basically service customers locally right from day one. And that was sort of the point of the ad from HSBC, which is that no business is too small to be thinking about these types of things. So even if you have a small business, you really need to be, if you're ready, if you're going to be localizing your product one day, you should be thinking about it from day one. And it transcends all different aspects of the company, so legal, making sure that you have the right legal arrangements in place, terms and conditions, privacy policy, et cetera, that allow you to function legally in the markets that you're looking to enter. Marketing, just like the product, making sure that the marketing materials are as completely localized as possible and as completely natural as possible to the local market. Support, does your support team speak the local language? Do they understand the local conventions, holidays, and so forth? Personnel, I mentioned that earlier, really important to get people who understand or really native to that market. And of course, servers and hosting, something to think about. We kind of take it for granted that the internet is just there forever, always. When you just connect to the internet, it's there. But you might want to be thinking about where your servers are located, how you have redundancy and scalability and so forth to service the local market as best as possible. So there's a lot of work involved, and part of the decision about researching the market is really thinking about all of these different things, thinking about how everybody in your company is affected. Are you really ready to make that investment? Because it's a huge investment to expand locally. And so my question to you and to anybody who's interested in growing your business into new markets is really, does everybody have the collective vision? Is everybody on board with this? That's part of your research, is not just looking at the market externally, but looking internally. Are you really ready to take on all the challenges and the responsibility and make the investment? And thinking about whether the investment is going to be a short-term investment and is going to pay off pretty quickly, or if it's a more long-term type of investment that you would expect a return from down the road. And really, this is just the beginning. Researching the market is just step one. As I mentioned earlier, it's really all about getting your whole company engaged around all the different things that it takes to go global and to expand into new markets. And so the rest of the presentation today is going to be covering a lot of these topics in more detail. So I wanted to thank all of you for your time. I really appreciate your attention, and I'm happy to open it up to questions now or later.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
So it's very interesting, una presentazione molto interessante e che sicuramente è molto di attualità per quanto riguarda le imprese italiane che hanno bisogno di andare ovviamente su mercati esteri. Quindi prima domande dal pubblico, punti interessanti che volete che vengano affrontati? Allora, la prima domanda che ti faccio, Heidi, è com'è che si può essere efficaci nell'andare a prendere nuovi clienti su nuovi mercati? Questo in particolare ovviamente è vero nel momento in cui ci si muove fuori dal proprio mercato di riferimento, per cui quali sono delle indicazioni che si possono dare alle start-up che hanno delle risorse limitate per andare a conquistare nuovi clienti in maniera molto effettiva?
Yeah, so one of the challenges about a startup is that there's always limited resources, and the same thing is often true at larger companies. You don't have infinite resources. So when you're considering expanding internationally, my experience has always been to kind of start small. Don't think about taking on the world, thinking about taking on one market, and even within that, maybe even one geographic region within that market if possible. So, for example, if a company is interested in expanding to the United States, if you have a product that works in your home country, maybe in Europe, want to bring it to the United States, maybe think about just pioneering one test market, maybe one city or one small segment of the market, and then learning and growing from there, because it's a constant iterative process. One thing that's really important, if you can do it, is to try to get the local people to try to help you make your product as local seeming and as local as possible, because that will encourage adoption. People will see it as something familiar, something that they can embrace, and relating it to something that they're already familiar with, which is why when you have competitors in the market or you have other players in the market, they can help you do that too if they've already kind of seeded or educated the market for you.
Grazie mille. Altre domande? Beh, un punto abbastanza importante che... Scusi. Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
What is the critical number of team members that you need to have to really get things off the ground? Because looking at all the things that you've listed that you have to research to actually get things going, how many people do you need to have? And do you have to have one leader? Do you have to have two people that are complementary? How do you see that, given your experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Most of the companies I worked at when we expanded internationally were pretty small teams, so less than 25 people usually, sometimes a little bigger, but it isn't, I think, so much a matter of numbers. It's more of a matter of priority and a matter of putting in the effort to do it. Having a strong management team that really believes in this kind of growth and can encourage it from the ground up obviously is very important. Having a team that is really, as I mentioned, dedicated to this is really important. I don't think there's any one key number, but just like growing any business, you need to have your bases covered. So you know, having all of those bases addressed, I think, is the bare minimum basically for considering international expansion.
Altre domande? Prego.
Hi. Do you really think we should talk any more about expansion or localization? I mean, if you look at Twitter, how popular it is in Italy, they don't have anyone here. If you look at Foursquare, how popular it is here, they don't have anyone here. If you look at Facebook, before hiring the first employee, it took years in Italy. So maybe it's not anymore about expansion, but about localization. You have tons of companies which don't have, you know, a physical local presence, which don't even speak the language, but they are so popular.
Yeah, the nice thing about those services, Twitter, Facebook, and so forth, they're largely user-generated content. It's not so much, you know, pushing out content from the company to the audience. It's more like the audience talking with each other. So for that reason, you know, the information provided by the company is pretty thin, and most of the information and more of the content on the site is provided by all the users. One thing that I really admire about some of those companies is that they've actually crowdsourced the localization of their product. So for example, Facebook and Twitter, you can go on, and I don't know if it's open now to the public, but it used to be where you could go on and actually they would have all the text strings there, and the public could suggest translations for them so that they could localize the product quickly and efficiently and as faithfully as possible, because they, you know, got the information from the users. So I think you're totally right. I don't think you necessarily need to have a presence, but I think, you know, if you really are sort of committed to the market and really want to understand the local nuances, that's the kind of investment that can be necessary.
Thank you very much, Heidi. And
Thank you. Thank you.
Very nice presentation.
Great, thanks.